Hey, happy Tuesday. This is your reading lesson. It's called Saved. So, yesterday we read a story, Philippi, and it was told from the perspective of Luke. And this is the same story, but it's told from the perspective of a different person in the story. Once again, this is historical fiction made up around biblical events. So, this story is going to take us 2 days into Wednesday. This is the first part. This is the first part, vocabulary. If someone regularly rode in chariots to get from place to place, would he be living now or long ago? So a chariot is something that people used long ago. If you were walking across a courtyard, would you be inside or outside? All right, a courtyard is outside in between buildings. If someone is a merchant, would he prefer to lose or keep his business? So he wants to keep his business. A merchant is someone who sells things. If there is a rescue from a burning building, would a person stay or leave the building? All right, so a rescue means you're leaving the building. You want to get away from danger. If someone were responsible for helping to win a race, would he receive an award or punishment? All right, so he would receive an award. Responsible means you helped them win. You did it. If you were observing a trial, would you be on a ball field or at a courthouse? All right, a trial is at a courthouse when they do proceedings with the law. That's called a trial. All right, so today's story, Paul, is about the same story that we read yesterday, but it's told from a different point of view. Paul and Silas and their friends went to Philippi to share the gospel. Lydia and her husband believed Paul's message and were baptized. After Paul cast out an evil spirit out of a slave girl, he and his Silas were thrown into prison when her owners realized that she could no longer make money for them. The Lord sent an earthquake that freed the prisoners from their chains and the stocks. The jailer and his household also placed their trust in the Lord and were baptized. And this story focuses on cause and effect. The cause of an event is why it happens. The effect is what happens. So you can't see here, but it says a soldier pulled the boy out of the road and the boy's life was saved. So the cause was because he pulled him out of the road, the effect is that his life was saved. Okay? The second one says God sent Paul to Philippi. And because he sent him to Philippi, then Paul preached the gospel in Philippi. All right, so Paul was put in prison. So what do you think the effect could be of that? We're going to read in the story to find out what the effect was. Okay, so before we read, I want you to ask these questions. Think about this while you read. What do you know about cause and effect relationships? We already discussed this. Cause is the reason something happens, and the effect is what happens because of that reason. So when you read today, think about what three things was Clement saved from? Clement is the person the story is told from their point of view. What questions did Clement have about being saved? So those are the two questions you should ask. Now, today I've put the reading on these slides for you, so you don't even have to go get your book. It's right here. All right, so those are our think as I read questions. What three things was Clement saved from? And what questions did Clement have about being saved? All right, so here's the first part of the story. It's a biblical fiction by Robin E. Scroggins, illustrated by Isidre Moniz. All right, questions. Clement hurried around a corner and stopped suddenly. The strangers that people had been following around the city were holding a meeting right in front of him. Clement had learned that the leader of the group was named Paul. Stirring up the crowds again, Clement muttered under his breath. Clement knew that one of the richest merchants in the city had already fallen under Paul's spell. Lydia had invited the group to stay at her home and announced that she believed in their God. And Lydia was not just worshiping this God along with many other gods of Philippi. She believed he is the only God. As Clement began working his way through the crowd, he heard a high-pitched cry. These men are servants of the Most High God, who come to tell us the way of salvation. Chloe, he thought. Everyone in Philippi knew about Chloe. She was possessed by an evil spirit, and her masters had become rich through her work of telling fortunes. Clement saw heads turning to look at Chloe. She was making it hard to listen to what Paul and the others were saying. Clement heard her call out several more times in the same high mocking voice. He wondered how long Paul would be able to put up with her. Then something Paul was saying caught his attention. Paul was telling people they needed to be saved. He said that Jesus could save them. Whenever Clement heard the word saved, a memory flashed in his mind. Clement's elderly father, Aulus, still told the story of how Clement had been saved as a child. A chariot racing through the streets had almost run him over. A Roman soldier had pulled him out of the way just in time. That was the reason Clement had decided to become a soldier. But what did Paul mean by saved? And who was this Jesus? Did Paul think the people of Philippi were not safe? Most of them were citizens of Rome. There were soldiers to protect the people. There was a great Roman road that came into the city so that they could travel and get everything they needed. The people of Philippi did not need to be saved from anything. Clement wondered about Paul's words all the way back to the prison. Perhaps he could ask his father what he thought. Several days later, Clement met the same crowd on a different street. Once again, Chloe was there at the front of the crowd, chanting her same mocking cry. Clement paused to watch. He could tell that Paul was disturbed with the kind of attention that Chloe was bringing. Suddenly, Paul looked steadily at Chloe and said, "I command you, in the name of Jesus Christ, to come out of her." The crowd stilled, startled at Paul's shout. Chloe stood quietly, her face calm. Clement stared at her. She seemed almost like a different person. She saw that the evil spirit that had controlled her for so long was gone. Chloe's masters knew it too, and they realized that if she no longer told fortunes, they would not make any more money. The angry masters dragged Paul and his friend Silas off toward the city square as Clement hurried toward home. Later, Clement walked slowly across the courtyard from his home to the prison, still thinking about Paul and Silas and their teaching. A commotion at the gate of the prison sent Clement running. He found a group of soldiers with two badly beaten prisoners. There were Paul and Silas. The wounded men moved slowly because of their injuries. There had been no time for a trial, but no one cared about treating Jewish strangers with fairness. The rulers must have agreed with the angry crowd that these men and their God were not wanted in Philippi. "Make sure these men do not escape," one soldier ordered. "Do whatever it takes to secure them." Clement knew what would happen if they did escape. He would be held responsible and put to death. He pushed the men into the inner prison. In the darkness, he threw them down and put their feet into the stocks. There would be no rescue from his prison. All right, so that was the first part of the story. Okay. All right, so who has come to Philippi to spread the gospel? Some strangers. What had Clement been saved from as a child? Remember that story about the chariot that went racing through the streets? It almost ran over him. Oh, there we go. What questions does Clement have about being saved? Okay, he doesn't know what it means. He wants to know what it means to be saved. He wants to know, hold on one second. He wants to know who is Jesus and what do the people in Philippi need to be saved from, because they have this big road that can take them to get the things that they need. They have all the protection from the Roman soldiers. So those are the questions that he has. What did Chloe's masters do to Paul and Silas? Hold on one second. They beat Paul and Silas and deliver them to the prison. And how does Clement secure Paul and Silas so they will not escape? And they're taken to the darkness of the inner prison, and their feet are put in the stocks.
Do you know where the scissors
No.
are?
I will get you some. I have one more slide. All right. So here's your worksheet for today. I'm going to do this together. The crowd stilled, and Chloe seemed almost like a different person. So it says, mark the sentence that tells why the event happened. We're looking for the cause. So the crowd stilled, and Chloe seemed almost like a different person. Why did that happen? Was that because Paul commanded the evil spirit to come out of Chloe in the name of Jesus Christ? Yes. Paul shouted at Chloe and asked her to stop chanting, or Paul walked away from the crowd and ignored Chloe? No, we know that first one is correct, so we're going to fill that bubble in right there. All right, Chloe's angry masters dragged Paul and Silas off to the city square. Why did they do that? Chloe's masters thought Paul and Silas were going to take her away. Chloe's masters realized that she could no longer tell fortunes and make money for them. Or Chloe's masters did not like what Paul and Silas were telling the crowd. So that's the right answer. That second one, she couldn't make them any more money. Clement threw Paul and Silas into the inner prison and put their feet into the stocks. Why did he do that? Chloe's masters were jealous of people listening to Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas were telling lies to the people. or Clement knew that he would be responsible if the prisoners escaped. So that last answer is correct. All right, put an X beside what is true of Clement. Okay, he lived in Philippi. He knew about Chloe, who was almost run over by a chariot. Okay, so he was not a merchant. Did not think the people in his city needed to be saved. That's what he did not think that. And tried to think of a way for the new prisoners to escape. He did not say that. All right, so I've done one of the pages for you today. You're going to do this page, 263 and 264, for your assignment. And then tomorrow you'll read the second part on your own and complete those pages in a Google form. All right, so we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.